Hey Thug parents. I know I used to start my intro with Hey Thug mamas, but I actually found out that I actually have just as many male dad followers as I do women, so I wanted to not leave them out. So hey Thug moms and dads. So I know it's been a while. I had a rough week this week actually, a lot of drama at my job. So I haven't really been kind of feeling it, but I'm back into it. So I actually had one of my previous videos with the speaker at my husband's graduation actually really kind of put me back on track today because he subscribed to my channel, so thanks for the subscription. And he kind of just was like basically not to waste my inspiration that he gave me and continue with what I'd like to do, which is inspiring all of you and helping and guidance, things like that. So one of the things I was thinking about today was trust. And as all of you know, trust is important in all relationships, friendships, marriages, dating, whatever it would be. But there's also a trust that needs to be had with your children. And I am the type of person, like, I trust somebody until they give me reasons not to trust them. And of course, throughout their lives, your children will test that trust and kind of fall down, and then you kind of have to be there to have them rebuild the trust. It's happened many times with my children, and I know it'll continue to happen as they get older. But one of the things that kind of is really sticks out in my head was like, my children have been staying at home by themselves for a long time, probably since they were about I would say 8 and 10. The reason for this is convenience. At the time, I was 10 minutes down the street from my work. I had people that would watch them for me, but I was a single mom at the time. And well, for some of that actually, because my husband and I have been together for 5 years, doing the math. So actually they might have stayed alone a little bit before that age. But basically, my children know right from wrong. My children know what I expect from them, the expectations, and they don't want to disappoint me. So I felt that they were old enough to stay by themselves. We had things in order for them for emergency situations, but they were, they've always been really good boys. I would never put a number on that, like for you, if you were saying, well, Carrie said to do it at 10 and 9 or 10 and 8 or whatever. No, you really need to know your own children to really determine what is you're comfortable with. It was never for, hours and hours and hours. I think the maximum was like 2 hours. And again, we had people in the area that could, in an emergency, come over to the house and help them, whether it was our neighbors, whether it was whatever. I don't think that most people agree with this way of thinking. But basically what I feel is like, it's my own children, like my own decision on how I want to run my household and how I see my children, and I have to give them the ability to show me that they are trustworthy. Has there been any occurrences, since they've been staying home? The only one that stands out in my head is in my house right now we have a loft, and so that's where I have my makeup room, and it's open to the family room below. My sons thought it would be a brilliant idea to bounce the ball from the loft to the living room, and it broke a lamp or a light fixture. The thing is like, I was more concerned about them hurting themselves or the dogs getting hurt by the glass that had fallen. But if you heard my husband in the background, he's watching football, so sorry about that. He forgets I make these videos. And they had consequences for that. So what their consequences were was like, okay, you broke this light, now you need to pay to replace it. It was basically like a chandelier and the globes around it, so they had to pay to fix that. But other than that, I mean, just like us, if we mess up, we have consequences. So that brings me to another topic. I know many parents these days, we all have access to our children's grades on a daily basis. We could check them constantly. And I do monitor them. I do look at them. But the thing is this, like, I will look at it, and if it's not favorable, I'll ask about it, and they'll say whatever it may be. So they'll say, well, I did really bad on the test, but I'm doing extra credit, or I'm doing these things. So to me, that initiative to even like, okay, I messed up, I'm working towards fixing it. Okay, so that little in-between part is what we've taught them, right? So like, okay, I messed up. How do I get to where I want to be? So this section from A to B is what we've taught them as parents. Okay, so that's all I can ask, right? So I can never expect my children to not mess up, because I'm an adult and I mess up too. So like, the part of the parenting that kind of is where you see that you've done your job and you've seen that you've grown is that in between. So basically I feel confident, right? So like, and they also do know that like, if that A to B point they didn't do what they needed to do, then after that there's consequences. So I don't have to give them consequences while it's occurring. Like, I need you to start at A, and if we get to point C and it's not been fixed, then there's a consequence, right? So that's where I'm at right now. Because the way I look at it is this: when they're older and they have a job and their boss gives them a deadline, I can't be there to say, okay, well, I see that you were supposed to be at this point at the project and you haven't reached it, so what are you going to do? I can't do that for them. I have to trust that they are going to do what they need to do to get the job done, because that is the requirement. Because once they're out of my house, I have to just trust that the skills I gave them were enough to make them succeed in the world. So I try to not have consequences while you're fixing it, right? So like, if you say you have a bad grade, you have this bad grade and you get a bad grade or whatever, it's not your final grade, it's just where you're at so far in the semester. If we get to the end of the semester and it's not good, that's a different conversation and that's different consequences. But if you do what you need to do to improve it, I almost respect you more, because it's like, I failed, I stumbled, I didn't get it, I worked harder to get to the point where I needed to be. I worked harder to understand it and to comprehend it because I was having trouble with it. Now granted, if they have trouble and they're coming to me and they're like, I just don't get it, can you please help me? That's different. That is me coming in and them coming to me and saying, I can't handle it on my own, Mom, I need you to help me. So I really think that it's important for us as parents to kind of let them stumble, kind of let them learn their lessons, kind of fail, but then fix it. Just like if they lie to you, and you know, the typical parent conversation, the typical parent lecture after that is like, you've lost your trust with me, you need to earn it back. I can't tell you throughout my childhood how many times I heard that. And I did. Thanks, Mom and Dad. I did earn it back. However, it's a horrible feeling, right? So like, you don't want someone to not trust you. You don't want someone to be disappointed with you. And it's not me screaming at them. It's just me saying like, okay, I'm disappointed. I'm upset. I don't feel like I could trust what you're saying to me. And that's a hard thing to hear as a person. It's a hard thing to say as a parent. But they understand, like, okay, I gotta work that much harder. I gotta show you that I'm trying. I gotta show you that I know I messed up and I acknowledge it and I'm working towards being better. So really, as parents, that's all we can ask. And as humans, really, like, when they're older and they're out in the world, you want to know that, like, you raise them to be good people. You want to know that you raise them to be respectful and trustworthy and all those different things. So by doing this when they're younger, it's definitely a way to do that. I always try to be, I always let them know that I'm there for them. I always try to give them the benefit of the doubt, because there are parents who are like, you're just lying to me. So here's the thing, if they lie to you and they're not working on it, that consequence will come later, right? So you don't need to be like hounding them. And I'll tell you, like, right now, my one older son, he has a bad grade in one of his classes, and I've asked him about it, and his dad's asked him about it, and his stepdad's asked him about it, and he's like, it's just not due yet. And I'm like, okay, well, your teacher is saying it is due. And he's like, Mom, I promise. And I can just take him at his word, right? I can only understand what he's saying. I can only take what he's saying because he's my son. And he also knows that if I find out what he's saying to me is not the truth, that now we have a different problem. So it doesn't say that you can't have that conversation. It doesn't say that you can't feel a certain way about it. But I do think it's better to just let your children kind of stumble and to not think that perfection is the end, the end goal. No one's perfect. And to expect them to be perfect would be pretty hypocritical because we're not perfect. So I think part of parenting is really to let yourself have imperfect children, to let yourself be imperfect, because, society, we judge each other, right? We judge each other on everything. And I'm guilty of it. I'm sure many of you are guilty of it. And we just try to teach our children, like, don't judge others and be nice to everybody. But then do we really do that? Do we not judge anybody? Do we not, So again, we're imperfect, and if our children see our imperfections, it'll just show them the reality. Until next time, if you have any questions, drop them down below. God, I'm having such problems today. I'm like, oh. And if you have any suggestions for future videos or anything like that, just let me know. I do have upcoming ideas. We are in the midst of a remodel here. Woo! It's gonna be a big one, guys. And I have a lot of feelings about that, actually. But that'll come in a later time. So if there's anything you guys want to talk about, please drop a topic below. Give me a thumbs up, subscribe, share, so that other people can just bask in my wisdom and all of that fun stuff. So until next time.